it's Greece that gave me my kefi back. And, you know, after all those years and decades of life and travel, it was Greece that turned me into a writer. And the book Unpacking for Greece was born from that experience.
Welcome to this episode of Greece Chats with Tony Kariotis. Today's guest is Sally Jane Smith, the author of Unpacking for Greece. The book itself will tell you exactly what we're talking about. We're talking Greece today. We're talking traveling to Greece. So let's jump into this conversation with Sally.
Hey guys, please bear with us for the first 2 minutes of this interview as we experience some audio technical difficulties. However, the problem does resolve quickly.
Hey Sally.
Hey Tony, I can't believe I'm speaking to you at last after watching you on Instagram for all this time.
Thanks for coming on the show. I know we've been going back and forth for a few months on this, but we finally were able to nail down a time to get this done.
Well, look, Tony, to be fair, you were in Greece, and I know if I were in Greece, what I would be prioritizing.
Definitely. Thanks for understanding. All right, let's jump into this. Why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself to our listeners?
Right. Well, my name is Sally Jane Smith, and I'm a writer. Unlike many of your guests, Tony, I actually am not Greek, and so I am really excited that you've invited me onto the show. I feel it's quite a privilege. I'm an immigrant Australian. I was born in Cape Town in South Africa, and I've lived on 5 continents. I didn't really think I would ever settle anywhere except back home. But I moved over to Australia in 2008 in the wake of a serious travel accident. And I only intended to stay for 2 years. I had an opportunity to work on a wildlife park, and I thought, well, that'll be a cool adventure, something to add to my list of life experiences. But a couple of months in, I met my partner, who is an Aussie firefighter who dropped in by the park one day. And look, to be honest, up until then, the only single males I'd met were kangaroos. So it was definitely raising the bar quite substantially. And I took him on a solo tour of the park. And the rest, as they say, is history. It's 15 years on and I'm still here, which was, not what I planned. But I've learned that life very seldom turns out the way you expect.
Definitely. Let's jump into this book. We're here talking Greece Travel Talk podcast. Talk to me about this book, Unpacking for Greece.
Yeah, so I mentioned my travel accident earlier. That was a bus accident that happened in Sri Lanka all the way back in 2006. And I realize it's a bit weird to start a book about Greece with a chapter set in Sri Lanka, but that was a really life-defining moment for me when I had that accident. Until I had the accident, I had actually been a fairly adventurous traveler in my youth. As I said, I've lived on 5 continents. I traveled extensively in 33 countries. But after the accident, I found that I just stopped traveling. Now, let me clarify that. I was still traveling, but I was doing things like going on a cruise or visiting family. I wasn't doing the kind of adventurous solo travel I had been doing. And then one day I realized that was what was missing in my life. I realized it's a bit of a cliche to have a midlife crisis and go to Greece. But, it's embarrassing to admit one is a cliche. But people have been going to Greece to find themselves for thousands of years. In Delphi, know thyself is what's written on the temple there. And I think that that trip to Greece, when I got on that plane and went to Greece, it was a conscious decision to face my fear of road travel. And I went on my own, determined to travel and explore as much of Greece as I could by bus. I had to get back on that bus, literally. The thing that made the Greek trip very personal for me is that my sister, who is 10 years older than me, I'm the youngest of 6 children, and my sister gave me a travel journal that my mother had written in 1978 when she spent a few days in Greece on the way home from a church pilgrimage to the Holy Land and the Vatican. And that journey to Greece with my mum's diary in my pocket completely changed my life. When I'm talking to non-Greeks, I say that it was Greece that made me fall in love with my life again. But if I'm talking to Greeks, I say Greek. It's Greece that gave me my kefi back.
Yeah.
And you know, after all those years and decades of life and travel, it was Greece that turned me into a writer. And the book Unpacking for Greece was born from that experience.
So it kind of answers my next question, but I'm going to ask it again and just kind of let you continue talking. You've visited all these countries. You've said you've lived over on 5 continents. Why Greece? Like, I want a little bit more of what made you fall in love with Greece itself.
Well, I didn't know how much I was going to fall in love with Greece when I went, but I actually chose Greece by scrolling through the World Heritage List. I had this drive to travel again, and I knew for a while that this is what I needed to do. I needed to face my fear. I needed to travel. It had been such an important part of my identity when I was younger, and I didn't know where to go. It was important to me to go somewhere I hadn't been before. I needed to get out of my comfort zone a little bit, and I had been returning again and again to other countries that I had visited before. I needed to go somewhere where I didn't speak the language and where I would have to encounter something new. I needed to go to somewhere magnificent, and there's nowhere more magnificent than Greece. But I didn't know where that place was, and literally I was sitting at work I was having a really bad day at the office, and I was scrolling through the World Heritage List, and as soon as I hit G for Greece and I saw what was there, I knew that's where I had to go, and a month later I was there. And it's a big deal to travel from Australia to Europe. It's a long way. That first trip, I was watching costs. I was watching my budget. It's a lot of money to fly over. That's the major expense for us. It's not the time spent in Europe, but the money and the time that's spent to get there. And that first trip took me 45 hours. Because I had worked out that the cheapest way I could get to Greece was to take I think it was a 5-flight journey, stopping all over the place, which still makes no sense to me. So yeah, it took me 45 hours to make that first trip from door to door.
And this first trip, remind me, what year was it?
So that was 2016.
Okay.
I was already in my mid-40s, and I'm embarrassed that it took me so long to get to Greece. And now when I look back at it, I can't understand why I'd never gone to Greece before.
So since 2016, how many times have you been going back often?
I've only been to Greece 3 times. The trips have been quite long. I've tried to go there for more than a month each time. And it would have been far, far more trips, but Australia's borders were closed for a very long time. And of course, as soon as the borders opened, the first thing I did was to go to Cape Town to see my family. That was the priority. So yes, only 3 times, but I hope it's the first 3 of many. My travels to Greece are, I think, perhaps different from many of your guests because, your guests are Greek and they're going home. I've been traveling as a tourist. I like to think that I am a more curious and mindful and respectful tourist than average, but I am a tourist. And when I go to Greece, I go to as many places as possible. So I've stayed in, I really should have counted this up before speaking to you. I've probably stayed in about 25 Greek towns. And I feel like I've only scratched the surface. There is so much more to Greece, and so many regions I still need to visit.
It's amazing. It seems like no matter how many places you visit, there's just so much more left to see. It's magical.
Yes. So I get to stay in all these places, but I guess what I don't get is that depth of experience that people have when they're going home. They're going to a village that their grandparents were born in, and they have relations there, and they get to have that depth of experience. I realize I'm only scraping the surface, but even superficially, Greece is just an incredible country.
Oh, definitely. So for Someone walks into a bookstore, they see this on the shelf. What are they expecting when they take this home?
Well, I'll show you the cover. So this is what Unpacking for Greece looks like, and I realize it'll be back to front for you. Um, the book, my focus on Greece is not a beach holiday. It is about culture, heritage, food. So this is a photograph over here, and it'll be hard for you to see. This is my mother and grandmother sitting on the steps of the Parthenon.
Yep.
And I know it's the Parthenon because I have this this is a terrible photograph. It's off kilter, and my mum and gran, they hardly make it into the frame here, and it's discolored
Right.
with age. But funny story of how I found out where it was. I actually posted that photograph when we found it, which was only last year that we found the photograph. I posted it on social media. And social media, I've been watching your series of historic photographs on Facebook, Tony. I love them so much.
Thank you.
I posted this on social media, and I put up a comment, and I said, any clues? Here we've got
Yeah.
my mum and gran sitting next to some ancient Greek columns. And as you know, ancient Greek columns are a dime a dozen in Greece. You can barely walk 10 steps without falling over one. And I was able to narrow down the places my mum had visited, which were very few. She was in Athens, and she also went on one of those day trips that go to Egina,
Yep.
Poros, and Idra. So I said, it's one of these four places, but is there any hope? And it started off a storm of comments on Facebook, but no one had a clue. And then
Right.
one of my friends, Mohammed, tagged a friend of his, Carl, who is an archaeologist in Beirut, of all places. And this Lebanese archaeologist, who I've never met, had never even seen his name before, he posted a picture of the exact spot my mum and gran were sitting. And what he had done is he'd gone to Google Earth, and he had matched up the pattern of the cracks in the columns.
Wow.
And he was able to tell me not only that it was the Parthenon, which wasn't a huge surprise, that was where they had been, although, these days you can't go and sit up on the steps
Yeah, you
like
can't
that,
go sit on those steps.
but the actual columns that they were sitting against. And I was like, this is the power of social media.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, no, it's
and
definitely
the
powerful.
comments coming in from all over the world of people saying exactly that was just an incredible experience. And that's when I knew that photograph had to be on the cover.
That's amazing. What's the best compliment you've received so far about this book?
Interestingly, a lot of people have focused. I wrote it to be a travel companion. It is about Greece. For me, Greece is the main character in the book, not me. And I've, tried to. I sometimes joke I should have subtitled it, I read museum panels so you don't have to. I get through all the boring stuff and bring out those little tidbits that are really, really fun and interesting to read. But a lot of people have been drawn to the personal story, and a lot of people have related to that, to finding peace with my mother, who died when I was in my 20s. Her becoming my travel companion through her diary was something that a lot of people related to. But the very best feedback I've got has been from, well, there've been two kinds. There've been a couple of people who have written to me, two people, and said they've been in a reading drought for years. They just haven't been able to find anything they want to read, and they finished the book in a couple of days. And the other thing is people who've said, I felt like I was traveling with you. I felt like I was on the page with you. And yeah, that means everything to me.
That's amazing. Well, can you share with us maybe like one part of the book or your favorite part of the book, something along those lines? I can't say the entire book. The entire book doesn't count as an answer.
I will say one part of the book. but I'm just concerned about giving your readers a false impression of the book, because really, I promise,
All right, then we'll save it.
90% of the book is set in Greece. And I've just
Okay.
told you the first chapter is Sri Lanka, but there is a moment when I was traveling. I was in Meteora,
Yep.
and I spent the day walking on the I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce this. I think it's the first time I've said it out loud. The Monemvasia, the monks' paths
Yeah,
between the monasteries,
you said it
and
great.
walking. Oh, thank you. And walking from one to the other just for hours and hours, and ending up at a little taverna where I had a moussaka that just I can still taste it when I close my eyes. Um, but landing up back, having a series of memories that were triggered off of traveling in Peru with my sisters, and having a moment where I suddenly realized that I was the same age that my mother had been when she traveled in Greece. And that hadn't occurred to me before. My mother, I was 6.5 when my mother went to Greece. The only thing I remembered about my mother's trip to Greece was that she brought me presents. And the presents that she brought these blouses, these real touristy, Greek peasant blouses that people buy in Athens. She bought one for me and one for my 17-year-old sister. And my sister was allowed to wear hers off the shoulder, and I was not. And, that for me was the lesson of life not being fair.
Right.
It had never occurred to me to think of my mother as a woman. She was always my mum. Mums are mums. And at that moment, I realized I was traveling to an unfamiliar country to find myself and having these experiences. And she was also a middle-aged woman who was traveling to a country that she didn't know. And she hadn't traveled much in her life at all. And that moment of connection, I think after having that I'm not a very spiritual person, but a very spiritual day, walking alone through those paths from monastery to monastery, switched something in my head. And I think that's the moment where a lot of decades old conflict that, my mum and I will never get a chance to resolve, resolved itself. I was able to let it all go and relate to her as another woman, another traveler through life.
Amazing. Would you do another book on Greece?
I have written a second book on Greece. It's almost ready to go. I actually had written Unpacking for Greece as one very long book that covered 2 trips to Greece, because that transformation for me, the first trip to Greece, I didn't know about my mother's diary when I went. So I didn't plan my itinerary around where she'd been. I did go to a few places she'd been, but that was coincidence. My second trip, I went back specifically to the places she had traveled, but also it was kind of a personal pilgrimage to take her diary to the places she never got a chance to travel. And it was also a transformation for me personally, where instead of a journey where I was battling anxiety every minute of the way and always trying to chase after the next experience, that second trip to Greece taught me to slow down, taught me to savor what I had, to follow the Greek example, I think, of wringing every ounce of life out of the present moment instead of always chasing after something more. So the second book is called Repacking for Greece. Unpacking for Greece was a lot about unpacking my own anxiety while experiencing these incredible destinations, whereas Repacking for Greece was more about replenishment, and that's where that journey to find fulfillment in my life kind of came full circle. And that book should be out I'm hoping by late April 2024.
Late April. Which actually segues to my next question in a way, not exactly. I want to know, what's it like putting a book together? I've always thought of it as an extremely daunting task. Like, put a book together. Oh, no way. That's going to be a lot of work. So now, what's it like putting it together? Give me a time frame. Like, when did you start unpacking and when was it ready?
I started unpacking a month after that 2016 journey. So, yeah, it's been, if you look at the journey of these two books, I mean, they were written in tandem. I was, by the end of 2017, I was already writing the second book, although, as I said, at that time, I thought it would be part of the first book. I hadn't got my head around the fact that these were two separate, related but
Sure.
separate stories. So 7 years, more or less.
Okay.
Some people write a lot quicker than I do, but I had to learn how to write. You know, at the time when I started writing, I thought I was a writer, but I wasn't. I had to go through a lot of experiences to learn how to write it. So it took me a year to write the first draft of the two books together. But it took 6 years of, or maybe let's say 5 years of intensive editing. And I rewrote that manuscript something like 37 times. I mean, some of them were minor rewrites. Most people, I don't think I'd need to do that if I wrote a book now. I hope I wouldn't, because it would kill me to do that again. But you know, as I said, I had to learn a lot about how to stop my words from getting in the way of the story, how to
Sure.
stop myself from being a filter between the reader and the experience of traveling Greece. I needed my readers to feel like they were traveling Greece themselves. And that took a lot of learning how to get myself out of the way. Um, and then, of course, the actual production of it as a book. You know, you go through multiple rounds of edits. I've had numerous editors at various stages of the process, and I think of them as like a, you know, when a ballet dancer performs a virtuoso performance, you know, there's been somebody in the background coaching them for years
Sure.
and challenging them to, you know, lift that leg higher or get that pose right or stop that tremor in the knee, you know. So it's the same with editors. They pick at every weakness that they can find in the book, and you just go back and rewrite and rewrite. And there's the cover design, there's the page formatting, there's a lot. There is a whole community of people that go into making a high quality book. It doesn't have to be done that way. You can do it by yourself, but it was important for me. I published the book independently because I was trying to find a publisher during COVID, and I was told that, you know, at the time I was told that no commercial publisher would take a risk on a non-celebrity travel
Right.
memoir. Um, and so, yeah, it was important for me that this book could stand on the shelf with any book published by a big five publisher. So I had to get that quality right.
That's amazing. Um, all right, so I want to talk a little bit about Greece in itself. So, but before we jump into that, I got to take a quick commercial break to read off our sponsors that make this podcast possible. So I'm going to read them off with, we'll jump right into it. So the first one's actually a travel app. It's called Origins. The all new Origins app is the perfect travel companion on your phone for when you're traveling. How does it work? Basically, imagine a GPS-based app that connects you with people based off your routes. So let's say I'm traveling to, I take a trip down to Australia, and I've already plugged the app in, and I've said I'm from Boston, I'm from Greece, I'm from Kalinos Island, I'm from Kalamata, and let's say I'm hanging out in Australia. I open the app, and it'll rank people based off if they share any of those four routes, and then I'll give you a chance to connect those. So I might see there's a Kalimian down the street. I send him a message. We hang out. We find out we're actually cousins, and the world's in a better place. That's Origins.
Sounds amazing.
Yes. Hop on your app store and download it today. It is available. Up next is Glosti. Glosti makes handmade Greek products right out of Greece for all occasions, gifts, men, women, children. They currently have their Christmas sale going on, so you can check them out at Glosti, KLOSTI.com. Up next, we have, this one's targeted to listeners in America. Our friend Savas Fetspatsidis from Savas Mortgage is a mortgage lender ready to help the Greek community of America realize their dream by becoming homeowners. He serves all 50 U.S. states. Check him out on Instagram at Savas Mortgage. Then we have, this is a product of Greece, Castra and Leon Premium Sippin' Vodka. It's distilled out of Nafpaktos, Greece. I haven't been to Nafpaktos yet. People say amazing things about Nafpaktos. Have you been to Nafpaktos?
Nope, not yet.
I need to check it out. Anyways, I have tried their product. It's delicious. Drink responsibly. Make sure you're over 21 if you are buying it. And 2 more to go really quickly. I won't take up too much more of your time with ads, but at greece-media.com, you can go and check out if you are looking for your Greek dual citizenship, a golden visa, or a digital nomad visa. We help everyone with those types of services. And if you're looking to build a trip to Greece with custom itineraries, travel blogs, travel services, hotel bookings, go to greece-media.com. That's it for ads. I hope I didn't bore you. I hope they were interesting.
Not in the slightest, although you did make me want a shot of that vodka, and it is 5:35 a.m., so that's probably not a good thing.
Perfect time to start. All right, so I want to talk Greece. I know you said that you're not from Greece, but where would you call home in Greece?
There is a place I feel like I'm coming home in Greece. Every time I've been to Greece, so that's only 3 times, regrettably, but hopefully it will be many more, I go to a writer's retreat on the Peloponnese. So there's a place called Methana on the Peloponnese Peninsula. It is, I say, if you imagine the Peloponnese as a hand that reaches down into the Mediterranean, the Peloponnese would be, Methana would be the diamond ring on the thumb of that hand. It's not an island, but it's almost an island. It's just connected by a very narrow strip of land to the peninsula. And there is a writer's retreat there called Limnitsa. And Limnitsa is my home in Greece. It's a place, I actually was not a writer the first time I went to Greece, and I was looking for a yoga retreat, and I made a serious error of judgment because it's changed my life completely, and ended up in a writer's retreat instead of a yoga retreat. Long story how that happened, but they made me very welcome, even though I wasn't a writer. And I think that if I hadn't gone there, that seed of, write a book about your experience wouldn't have germinated. Right. And every time I walk back in there, I feel peace. It's a gorgeous place. It's got its own little private beach, little pebble beach. It's a place that's just a garden filled with hammocks and little writing nooks and a fresh baked cake that arrives every afternoon as if by magic, because the baker calls around. There's hardly any shops nearby. It's not near Methana town itself. It's near a village called Ayos Georgios, and that's my home in Greece. Highly recommend it to anyone who wants to write.
There you go. What are 3 of your best or favorite travel tips for anyone that's coming to Greece for the first time?
I think to recognize that Greece is more than just a couple of islands in Athens, and that the experiences that you can have in Greece are as diverse as the types of people who travel there. People have different interests, and I often see on travel websites and on social media and so on, people saying, "I'm going to Greece for 7 nights. Where should I go?" And I think, how should I know where you should go? Tell me what you like. Do you enjoy beaches? Do you enjoy hiking? Do you enjoy Do you enjoy great food? Are you a nightlife person? Are you a person who likes to get up early in the morning and visit the heritage sites before anyone gets there? Are you a person? One of my passions when traveling is I love reading. I love books, and I like to pair books with places. There's nothing I enjoy more than going to a place where I've read a story and then experiencing that place for myself. And those stories could be contemporary novels, or it could be stories told by Homer thousands of
Right.
years ago. But going there and finding those places where Agamemnon walked, or more importantly, where Clytemnestra walked, because she's my favorite character from the Bronze Age Greece. So I think one thing is to understand that people are unique and Greece has so much to offer. Don't just take a one size fits all answer.
Hmm.
Whatever is going to bring out your passion, you are going to find it in Greece. So that would be my one piece of advice. My other piece of advice, I guess, would be don't be afraid to get off the beaten track. My experience as a traveler is you can sometimes walk 5 minutes away from the crowds and find a unique experience that you wouldn't have had otherwise. Sure, you've got to go to the main sites. There's a reason they are the main sites. They are
Right.
spectacular, and you will never forget them. But if you're visiting the Acropolis, you can walk 5 minutes away, maybe make that 6 or 7 minutes away, and you can be at the Pnyx, the birthplace of democracy. Sure, not exactly the democracy as we understand it today, but the democracy that has shaped the Western world ever since. You can be there alone and you can look back up at the Acropolis and there'll be a swarm of people there. Um,
Hmm.
sure, go to the Acropolis, don't miss it, but also walk 5 minutes away and have an experience that you might not otherwise have had. And I guess my final tip might be think about the time of year you want to go. I know not everybody has freedom to travel whenever they want. Some people have to travel at a particular time. You get your 2 weeks vacation and that's when you got to go. And go then. But think about the weather. Are you someone who enjoys the heat? Are you somebody who's going to find the heat off-putting? I always travel. My preference after my first trip to Greece, when I went in August, September, now I go in May. For me, May is the perfect month to go to Greece. It's not as crowded. The prices are a little cheaper. The weather for me is fantastic. I can go to the beach here in Australia, so I like to spend that time packing in experiences of just walking around cobbled lanes and discovering new things. And it's much nicer to do that when it's not too hot.
For sure. Amazing. All right. So this next part, I'm going to fire off with quick questions, and you're just going to give me your favorites. So what are your 3 favorite Greek islands?
3 favorite Greek islands. Crete, although you can almost not think of it as an island. It's so huge.
Right. Yeah.
And please, if you've only got 2 days to go to Crete, sure, take those 2 days. But I was there for 2 weeks, staying in 5 different
Yeah.
towns, and I could have stayed there for
Right.
6
It's not
months.
enough.
And
Yeah.
yeah. Um, some people might knock me for this, but Santorini,
Hmm.
it is touristy, sure, but you will never see a land seascape like that anywhere else in the
Right.
world.
You're
It
right.
is incredible. It
It's
is
hard to leave it off the
something.
favorites list.
Yeah, yeah. If you get a chance to go to Santorini and see that once in your life, take it.
Hmm.
And the third one is a quite recent experience, and it surprised me. Egina.
Okay. Yeah.
I
I hear a lot
spent.
of people put that one on their list.
I had my most magical experience of all my experiences in Greece by after a chance conversation with somebody telling me to go to Paliachora in Egina. and I have never experienced anything like that. It was powerful. I think about it constantly.
Amazing. Okay, give me your 3 favorite mainland destinations.
I've already mentioned Meteora, and that's got to come
Yep.
up there
All
again,
right. So
something you'll
Methana.
never see anywhere else. Amazing place. If anyone is listening to this and doesn't know what we mean by Meteora, or as us foreigners call it before we get corrected enough times, Meteora,
Yep.
Google it. Do a Google image search right now if you can. Meteora is incredible. I think my second one would be Monemvasia on the Peloponnese, another amazing place, and also worth a Google image search. And then the third, I've thought if I had to move to Greece tomorrow, which is something I fantasize about when I'm sitting in the office, Nafplio. Nafplio was
Great
a place
choices.
I felt like I could live.
Great choices. All right, 3 favorite Greek dishes.
Moussaka. I will.
Okay.
Moussaka is I'm not a big pasta eater. So most people tell me I should eat the pasticcio, and I'll enjoy a pasticcio, but moussaka is for me, after years of eating lasagna, being able to eat moussaka, which doesn't have the pasta in it, and the eggplant is fabulous. Paidakia is a firm favorite. Although the first time I tried to order paidakia, I got told off and told it was not a good time of year for lamb, and I should come back at Easter and eat it then, which I've done. And yeah, it's fabulous. And, the produce in Greece is so amazing compared to what I can get in a supermarket here. It is hard to beat a Santorini tomato. Or tomato. Sorry, I'm talking in American.
No, it's okay.
It's hard to beat a Santorini tomato with a few capers and some olives and a bit of feta. It's a taste explosion compared to what I can get here.
And 3 favorite Greek desserts.
Well, usually I'm too full after the meal to eat dessert because people are not afraid of big portions in Greece.
That's a good point.
But I would say loukoumades are great. I enjoy loukoumia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing correctly, the delights. And I don't know the Greek name for it, but spoon sweets, a bit of fruit and yogurt. Again, it's simple, but it's perfect.
And are you a coffee drinker? And if so, is there a specific Greek type of coffee you enjoy?
I knew this question was coming, and I'm afraid I'm not a coffee drinker. I get migraines from coffee, which is a problem because people in Greece are so hospitable. They keep bringing it to me. But I'll have to duck out of that question.
That's okay. All right, I only have one question left for you, but unfortunately, this question is designed for Greek people. But I'm going to tweak it. I'm sure you know if you've listened to my podcast, my closer question. Coming. But I got to tweak it on the fly. So usually the question is, what does being Greek mean to you? So I'm going to ask you, what does Greece mean to you?
Well, I think those questions are actually intertwined because for me, Greece, as much as it is about the literature and the heritage and the food, it also is about the people. And there is a sense of Greekness that I do get. And for me, I have thought about this because I knew this question was coming. It's a combination of 3 things. And 2 of those things are words that don't have an easy translation into English. And those 3 things for me, the one is kefi, that joy of life and that passion for extracting everything from life in the moment. The other is philoxenia, being welcomed, and it's not only in Greece. I have this for me, Tony. Today is an example of philoxenia. I was not expecting my book to be picked up by Greeks and Greek Americans the way it has been. And as I say, I wrote it as an outsider. I wrote it as a tourist. And to have places like, I'm going to be talking in a book club in a Hellenic cultural book club in South Florida soon. That kind of acceptance by Greek people is amazing. And finally, just that incredible strength and resilience that Greeks have from having centuries of invasions and people trying to take their country from them, and they are still
Right.
standing. They have outlasted them all. That strength and resilience of Greeks is part of it too. And so what Greece means to me is what being Greek means to me. It's experiencing what Greek people are like.
Well said. Thank you for that. That's all I have. Take this moment to plug the book, plug where we can find it, plug your social medias, websites, anything you'd like to say that we may have left out.
Thank you. Yes, so my book is Unpacking for Greece, and the second one, as I say, is Repacking for Greece, coming out soon. You can buy this book, you can order it from any bookstore, or you can find it on any of the major online retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, it's there in all of them. It is on Amazon's KDP program, which means if you're a subscriber, you can read it at no extra charge. And go ahead and ask your library to get it. I'm happy to get this book into as many hands as possible. It's not about the money that I can make from it. So ask your library to get in a copy. You can find me. My website is sallyjanesmith.com. I've got a newsletter that goes out approximately 9 times a year that you can sign up for there if you like, or you can find me on 5 or 6 different social media channels. I'm at Journeys in Pages on all of them.
Lovely. Well, Sally, thank you for coming on the show. This was a very informative conversation. We'll look forward to checking out the book. Hopefully my listeners will check out the book, and maybe we'll cross paths on your next trip in Greece.
I hope so.
Other than that, I thank you guys for listening to this episode of Greece Chats, and we'll talk to you again on the next episode.
Awesome. Thank you,
Sally.
Tony. I'm so grateful to you for inviting me on the show.
Thank you.